I always thought working the night shift was just tiring, until the night I encountered passengers no one else could see. My name's Leo, I'm 28, and I took a strange job as a night watchman at an abandoned train station in the middle of nowhere. The trains haven't run for years, and the flickering lights barely cut through the thick darkness. Those first nights, I blamed the exhaustion, the skittering rats, and my restless imagination. But then, I started seeing figures on the platform. Passengers who didn't appear on any official schedules, who never bought tickets, and who never spoke a word to me. They weren't ordinary travelers. They were lost souls, ghosts trapped between worlds, unable to truly leave this place. Over time, I learned the rules for dealing with them. Never look them directly in the eyes. Always keep the flashlight in my left hand lit. Never answer their questions. And most importantly, make sure the old station clock strikes midnight on time so they can find peace. One stormy night, with the power out and the clock stuck, those restless spirits began to stir. I had to improvise their departure with the sound of a ghost train that would never arrive. That's when I realized this job wasn't just bad luck or fatigue. It was a silent pact between the living and the dead. And maybe, just maybe, this night shift would either save me from fading away or condemn me to wait forever for a train that will never come. I remember the first night like it was stupidly clear. Me, a folding chair, cold coffee, and a station that smelled like rust and old newspaper. It was midnight when I saw her, a pale woman in a coat, standing by platform 3. Who was she? She wasn't buying a ticket, she didn't have a bag, she didn't show on any of the old timetables stacked in the office. I watched her from the doorway, flashlight in my left hand because that had become my reflex, and I felt something in my throat tighten. Where was I? At the terminal's platform under a single flickering lamp. When did it happen? Right after the clock clicked past 12. How did she move? Like someone who forgot they were supposed to be alive. I didn't look her in the eyes. I didn't talk. I just sat there. And she turned her head as if listening for a train that never came. That little tilt of the head made the hair on my arm stand up, and I knew I couldn't simply go back to sleep. Something was starting and it wanted my attention. The next afternoon, I poked around the station because anger and curiosity kept me from sleeping. The old clock in the hall was frozen at 11:58. The hands dusted like they'd been coated in time. Who had touched it last? Probably the last man who took this job, whoever he was. How did I discover it? By following the sound of a dripping pipe to the maintenance closet, where time and metal met. Where was I? Kneeling on the cold tile, scraping grime from the clock face. When did it matter? The clock mattered every night because that's when the restless ones got loud. I tried winding the mechanism. It groaned, but wouldn't budge. On the inner rim, someone had scratched a name so faint I almost missed it. An initial and a date. M 1976. It felt like a warning. I left the name in my pocket like a stone, and when I climbed back onto the platform that night, the woman in the coat was closer than before. After 3 sleepless nights, I started noticing patterns. Rules, really. I learned them by trial and error. What happens if you look at them? They latch on, their faces burn into you. How did I confirm that? I caught a quick glimpse once and spent the next hour tracing the imprint of a stranger's sorrow in my mind. Where did I keep my flashlight? Always in my left hand. It felt stupid until it saved me from being drawn into a conversation with a man in a black hat who never stopped smiling. Who told me the rest? The station seems to teach you if you listen. When they ask a question, don't answer. If you answer, they get louder, and they follow the sound of your voice. I started speaking in whispers to test it, asking nothing, saying nothing, and the platform exhaled. Those rules became my map, and on the 4th night, when a cluster of silent figures gathered under the clock's frozen face, I realized following the map might be the only thing standing between me and disappearing. I found the ledger tucked beneath a loose floorboard by the ticket booth. Who kept it? Whoever worked here before. What was inside? Names, dates, and little notes next to some entries. Left without ticket. Waited at platform 2. Never left. Where was I reading it? under the halogen lamp in the office, rain pattering against the glass. How did the ledger change things? It made the abstract real. Each name matched a face I'd half remembered from the platform. A man with a paper bag, a woman with a child's toy, an old conductor in a cap. When I turned a page, a certain name blurred into the ink. My own. Not mine exactly, but someone with my last name 3 decades earlier. I nearly slammed the book shut, but curiosity, a dangerous thing, kept me flipping. At the very back, someone had written in a different hand, hurried and smaller, "Do not let the clock stop." Right below that line, a smudge that looked disturbingly like a fingerprint. She kept coming back to platform 3, the woman with the red scarf. I learned to watch where she stood so I could avoid her gaze. Who was she? Sometimes she seemed like a map of an ordinary life, a coat, a worn leather purse, the posture of someone who'd waited for trains for years. How did she act? Patient. How did I feel? Sick to my stomach and oddly protective. Where did I see her most? Near the station bench where a child's chalk drawing was permanently etched into the concrete. When did she gesture? Every night before midnight, she'd lift her hand as if to press an invisible knob on the air. Once I edged closer and the scarf fluttered, though there was no wind. She pointed toward the broken clock and then toward the tracks, silent but insistent. I wanted to ask her what she needed, what train she waited for, but I didn't. I remember her looking for something I didn't have, and when she moved away, the emptiness she left on the platform felt like a warning. They say storms make ghosts louder. I didn't believe them until the night the thunder started. Rain battered the station roof and the power flickered like a heartbeat. Where was I? In the control room, hands braced on the desk, watching the lights fail. Who came with the storm? All of them. Every empty-eyed passenger I had cataloged in the ledger gathered at once, dripping phantom water that didn't fall through the platform. How did they move? Slow, as if the wind guided them. When the electricity cut, their outlines sharpened against the dark like chalk on blackboard. My flashlight in my left hand felt feeble among them, but their faces were restless, pulling at the edges of the night. I closed my eyes for a second, and in the silence I heard what sounded like a far-off whistle, a single mournful note. When I opened my eyes, the woman with the scarf was running her fingers over the clock's glass, as if begging it to start. I thought if a train's whistle was what they wanted, I could fake it. There was an old public address system in the booth, dusty with a cracked horn. Who else did I tell? No one, because you don't tell people about things like this. How did I try? I rewired the PA to loop a recorded train sound and patched it through my phone. Where did I put the speaker? Facing the platform, hidden behind a stack of crates. When did I press play? Right as the clock ground toward midnight. The sound came out thin and broken, an echo of a real whistle. For a heartbeat, the figures turned as one. Then a strange thing happened. Some drifted toward the sound and vanished like smoke, but a few remained, motionless and staring at me with faces that seemed to know the trick. The fake whistle worked, but only half. The remaining ones looked angrier than before, like passengers who'd been promised a departure and had been cheated. During daylight, I drove out to the town hall, a cracked building where old timetables and municipal notes sleep. Who kept records? An archivist with 2 teeth and a patient voice. How did I get them? I questioned him like a man asking for directions to escape. There were newspaper clippings about a derailment here decades ago, mention of a closed line, and a list of victims whose names matched the ledger. Where had the wreck occurred? Right near the old trestle, now fenced off and eaten by weeds. When did the station close? The article said immediately after the accident. Politicians called it an unfortunate discontinuation. None of that explained why the dead still sat on my platform, but it explained the ledger and the way the same names kept coming back to me in a loop. On my way out of the archive, the archivist slid a brittle photograph across the counter. The platform crowded in daylight, and a watchman standing with his back to the camera, his jacket frayed, his shadow long. The back of the photo read simply, "Do not forget the bell." I tried to phone anyone who could help. The station owner, the railway board, even local cops. Who did I call? People whose names were printed on yellowing contracts. How did it go? The line hummed dead. My calls dropped before the operators could say anything. Where was the break? Somewhere between the office and the main line, or maybe somewhere in whatever seam separates their world from mine. When did I give up? By dawn, after my phone battery gave out and the voices on the platform had grown bolder. That morning, when I went back to check the ledger, there was a new note penciled at the margin in a hand I didn't recognize. Don't leave the station before midnight. It wasn't my handwriting, but I felt the command settle in me like a cold coin in a pocket. That night, with the phone useless and the clock still stuck, the passengers' murmurs formed into a rhythm that sounded almost like counting. I started tearing the station apart for clues and found a leather journal wedged under the bench where commuters never sat. Who had written it? The pages belonged to a man who had been a watchman long before me. How did it read? At first like mundane notes, repairs, complaints, weather. But then the entries changed. They come at night. Left-hand flashlight. Do not answer. Where was I reading it? Beneath the desk lamp, my breath fogging the page. When did the last entry happen? The final date was the same as the name I'd found scratched on the clock, 1976. The handwriting grew shakier. If the clock stops, do not run. If you run, they go with you. Those words contradicted everything I'd been practicing. They'd tattooed a new fear in me. I flipped to the back and found blank pages stained as if someone had been crying on them. The last line, written big, said simply, "They taught me to listen." One night the power cut completely. Where? The whole grid around the station went out, leaving us in a world of black. Who suffered most? The passengers, because without the clock they lost whatever scheduling bound them. How did I react? I did the only thing that felt possible. I fumbled for the speaker and looped the most convincing train sound I could find on an old cassette. When did I push play? Exactly when the hall clock clicked toward midnight and then stuttered, stopped at 11:59. The fake whistle blew and lights flashed back like someone answering a summons. Some figures dissolved like fog, but one boy stayed, his small hand reaching toward me as if for a parent. His eyes were vacant yet pleading. I hadn't planned for this. He touched my sleeve and he fit like a key trying every lock. The moment his fingers grazed my skin, something inside me chilled, and I realized I had no idea what I'd do if he never let go. The boy refused to leave the platform. Who was he? A kid no older than 8, wearing a coat too big for him and a hat with a missing button. How did he linger? Quietly. Too quiet. Like a stopped clock that remembers its last tick. Where did he stare? At the tracks, then back at me, as if comparing me to some memory. When did he speak? He didn't. Not with words. One night he pressed his small palm against the glass of the ticket window and mouthed my name as if he'd known it his whole life. I kept my eyes down and the flashlight in my left hand, but his presence felt heavy enough to pull the room toward him. I tried everything. The recorder, the bell, the whistle. He watched each attempt like a man assessing a flawed forgery. The worst part was how easy it became to imagine stepping off the platform and following him, just to stop his pleading. I wanted to run, but the journal's warning kept replaying in my head. Late one night I leaned on the clock's glass and saw more than my reflection. Who was reflected? Not just me, but a pale echo beside my shoulder that wore my face like an old mask. How did I notice? The glass fogged with my breath, and for a second I saw my reflection lagging behind, as though the person I was had been slow to wake. Where was I? Pressing my palm flat against the cold, yawning face of the clock while the platform hummed with the quiet of waiting. When did the sensation start? The more I spent nights there, the more my hands felt like they belonged to someone else. Cooler, less real. I caught sight of a slender vein map under my skin that paled with each hour. That's when it struck me. The watchman before me had faded into that glass, into an image. The journal's last sentence looped through my head like a chant. If you run, they go with you. I wondered whether the echo beside me would smile when I left or when I stayed. Desperation makes you test rules like broken fences. One dawn, when the platform was empty of living people, I packed a bag. Who knew? Just me and the idea that leaving would solve everything. How did I try to go? I walked to the side exit, liver and keys in my pocket, and shoved the big iron door. Where did I end up? Outside in a world washed in gray morning that looked exactly like every other morning should. When did things go wrong? The strip of road leading away from the station looked empty. Too empty. My phone had no signal, and the bus stop was deserted. I turned back, heart thudding, to find the station doors sealed from the outside. The hinges wouldn't budge. Scratches on the frame looked old, like they'd been made by desperate hands before mine. I pressed my palm against the glass, and somewhere between the glass and the steam of my breath, someone tapped back. I started to believe the bell in the tower mattered more than the clock's hands. Who rang it last? The old watchman, if you believe the archivist's story. How did I find the bell? A narrow, greasy ladder behind the ticket booth led up to a tiny room full of pigeons and damp ropes. Where did the rope go? Sputtered down into the corridor, frayed at the end like an old tongue. When did I try it? On a night the fog hugged the rails, hands numb from cold. I hauled on the rope and the bell thudded, low, resonant, and very old. The sound made the passengers' faces tilt, but instead of easing their rest, it made some of them restless, pacing as if preparing to board. That bell felt like a pulse that kept them tethered. In the ledger margin, I found another scribble. Bell rings, heart stir. Do not wake those who sleep. My tugging had woken them. The next thing I heard was a child's laugh, clear as a coin, right behind me. One afternoon, while I was staring at the ledger, a woman in sensible shoes walked into the station as if she'd always been there. Who was she? A local historian who smelled like lavender and dust. How did she know about the station? She'd grown up in the town and brought newspapers and postcards folded with cornered notes. Where did we sit? At the little wooden table in the office with light pooling over the pages. When did she speak plainly? She told me stories about the accident, about the men who'd kept watch, about the bargain. Someone had to keep the rhythm of departures. She said it softly, like a recipe. She also said something else. The job could be passed on. You could choose to stay and keep the watch, or you could walk away and leave a gap that the dead would fill. My chest cramped at the thought. It's not a job, she said, tapping the ledger. It's a stall in the road. She handed me a note folded so small the edges were soft and said, "Think about what you carry." The note led me to a key hidden in a flower pot at the station's entrance. Who had put it there? The historian claimed she hadn't. She only pointed. How did I know it was for me? The key's bow had an engraving, my name, clear as if freshly stamped. Where did it fit? It slid into a locker in the back room with a quiet, satisfied click. When did I pry the locker open? On a night when the rain sounded like fingers at the window. Inside was a small brass bell, a faded cloth ID, and a photograph of the Watchman from the old archives. The photograph felt less like a picture and more like an invitation. The bell in the locker chimed faint when I shook it, and something in the platform's air shifted. The ledger's pages turned themselves a fraction when I set the bell down on the counter, like a breeze passing through paper, and I realized this was the kind of choice that never really freed anyone. The historian taught me an old rite, simple in words, brutal in truth. Who could perform it? Any living person who understood what they'd be giving up. How did it work? You offered a token of yourself, a memory, a warmth, a sound, into the station's belly, and the station, in turn, let one soul leave. Where did I practice, eh? On the platform, under an indifferent moon, clutching the brass bell from the locker. When did I get brave enough? After a week of watching faces grow more wanton with each stopped clock. On the night I tried, I stood before the boy and placed the bell in his small hands, whispering the student's name written in the ledger. I recited words the historian had read from a page so old the letters bled. For a moment the boy squeezed the bell like a promise, and the air tasted of copper. He looked at me with something close to understanding. Then the flashlight in my left hand dimmed, just a little. I felt something go quiet inside, and the boy smiled as if he'd just been given a ticket. That night the station sang like it had a throat. Who left? Several of the faces I'd known, old conductor, woman with scarf, a man clutching a paper bag. One by one they moved toward the bell's chime and thinned into nothing. How did they go? Not with a physical step, but with a loosening, like a knot coming undone. Where was I? Standing by the edge of platform 4, chest hollow in a way that felt almost like relief. When did it end? The last minute dragged on, the clock ticked, caught, and then slid to midnight, slow as a held breath. The boy who had the bell began to vanish too, his edges dissolving into light. But right before he blurred, he turned to me and mouthed, "Thank you." The light went out and the platform smelled like rain and old pennies. For the first time in weeks, the place felt thin, like a curtain that had been peeled back. And then I realized my left hand had trouble holding the flashlight steady. The skin looked pallid, almost translucent. Morning came with a pale, ordinary sun, and the station looked like a place that had been tidied of its ghosts. Who was left? Me. How did I look? Tired, with a left hand that didn't thrill with warmth like it used to. Where did I sleep? In the folding chair, now arranged by the office window with the ledger closed beside me. When did I become sure? When I flipped to the last pages and found a new entry written in my own handwriting, neat and a little shaky, listing the rules I'd learned. The brass bell sat on the counter, and the clock for a while kept perfect time. The historian came once more, middle-aged now, and gave me a look that mixed gratitude with something like sorrow. She said, "You did what needed doing." I told her I would try to leave, to go back to a life with daytime and pizza and noise. But the station had a way of keeping its debts clear. My reflection in the clock glass was paler, yes, but I could still see my eyes. I made a choice: keep the watch, sound the bell when the clock stalls, and trade pieces of myself so others could go. It's not noble, it's lonely. It's a trade-off I agreed to because some faces will always be waiting for the train they think they missed. And if you ever find a station like this, late and quiet, listen for a bell, because sometimes someone is keeping the tracks clear for the living and the dead. I still wonder, in the dead hours, whether I'm saving people or just filling a seat that will one day be mine to empty. But the whistle never needed me to answer back. The only sound I allow now is the train that isn't coming, and the bell that tells them it's time to leave.